Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, the Teachers Guild of New South Wales would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we gather today and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this event. We honour the elders both past and present and recognise the enduring cultures and connections of Aboriginal peoples to the lands and waters throughout Australia. My name is Mr. Patrick Nam, Vice President of the Teachers Guild of New South Wales, and I express my gratitude to each of you for joining us for our Guild Education series. Today's discussion centres around the topic of the role of mentoring and coaching for teachers, focusing on network coaching with masters, focusing on difficult conversations and scenario-based coaching conversations. It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel who will provide invaluable insights on this subject. Our distinguished panelists are Dr. Len Nixon, School of International Studies, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, University of Technology, Sydney, and Dr. Agnew, National Academic Director, Professional Experience Education, University of Notre Dame, Australia. We are also grateful to Mr. Len Nixon, Counsellor for Educators Network of the Teachers Guild of New South Wales, and also Commercial Studies teacher at Barker College, who will be moderating this event. I extend my thanks to our panelists for their presence here today. Before we proceed, I would like to address some housekeeping matters. Please feel free to share your experiences, thoughts, and questions in the chat function. For questions directed to the panel, kindly use the Q&A box in the Zoom control panel. I kindly request that you keep your questions concise and relevant to the topic at hand. Our moderator will guide the discussion and pose questions to the panel during our session. Once again, I express my appreciation to Lauren and Agnew. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Lovely to be here.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to recap on where we've been in terms of the Guild, and just to, there's a few people that have joined us and haven't been with us before. So what has happened is that the Guild has gone down the line of mentoring and coaching, particularly for early career teachers, but not just for them, but also for the general teaching population. So what we're looking at, what we've looked at in the last 6 months has been looking at what do we mean by coaching, what do we mean by mentoring, and I think there's a real issue there in terms of making a distinction between the two. Firstly, in terms of mentoring, which I think the focus of the discussion should be that today, to be perfectly honest. What we're talking about is someone who, or a mentor who is a person who is certainly knowledgeable in terms of not just pedagogy, but also in terms of content. Someone who is experienced. It's also contextualized within a school itself and maybe a particular faculty. With it also too, we talked about earlier about having a structured program, which probably needs to be, and given the questions that were sent to us about dealing with, that's one of the big issues about having a structured program. And also too, I guess the other thing about it is about judging the progress of mentoring within the school. And it's all very well to have the program of mentoring, but whether in fact it A, helps the teacher, and B, the outcomes of the students more a point. The other point is about coaching. Coaching has been universal in terms of business, and more importantly in the last probably 15 to 20 years has been in schools. And coaching in a sense is looking at supporting the person within a school, particularly a school environment. And I guess the issue here is about conversations. And I guess the other thing that's important is about the coaching skills that are required and which are also can be used in terms of, and I think, if you try to delineate between coaching and mentoring, you're actually going to go in between depending on the situation. So that's where we've been. It's been a very fruitful development in terms for the Guild. And I think quite a few people it's raised a few issues in schools about where they are in terms of their own coaching and mentoring. But on the other side of it, it is probably the most important thing at present, given the environment where you've got issues like, for example, 1 is retention, 2 is motivation, 3 is attraction. They're the sort of things I think that are really important And knowing my background here at Barker, where I'm the lead, one of the lead coaches, one of the reasons is for coaching, for mentoring, is the fact that we believe that we want to retain the staff. They're pretty hard to get, and particularly experienced, and even people who have shown who are straight out of university. We want those people there. So that's where we've been at present, and it's been a really good situation for us. But anyhow, that's just the background. So I'll turn it over to Lauren and Annie in terms of they can talk about their experience and where they see mentoring, given the fact that they've written about it, they've published authors in this particular area, particularly in the area of digital agency. So ladies, here we go.
Thank you, Len. I'd just like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. This is an area that Annie and I have been quite heavily involved in. We've both been educators for many years, and dare I say decades, and have been fortunate enough to be part of lots of different forms of mentoring. But we also are lecturers in the Master of Education for Leadership and Learning at UTS, and specifically in that mentoring subject. So we have the benefit, I guess, of having worked with a lot of educators on their mentoring journey. So it's wonderful to be able to share our experience here tonight. But I might just hand over to Annie to talk a little bit about her background as well, and then we might get into sort of the nitty-gritty of mentoring, I guess.
Thanks, Lauren. And yeah, like as Lauren was saying, we've both worked together for a lot of years, but both of us also have extensive background in education in various aspects and contexts. And so within schools, in leadership and various sort of positions where mentoring has been either happening or orchestrated or deliberate, informal and formal. So a lot of experience in that, and also for both of us outside of the actual school sector. So I was with Apple for 4 years and worked nationally and internationally with them, and obviously with different types of mentoring in that respect. And so I think apart from just the school, we were sort of looking at the whole context for you, because mentoring itself is supposed sort of ubiquitous in that really it's or polycontextual, I suppose, where whatever situation you're in, we can consider the different types of mentoring, and drawing heavily on what Len was saying, perhaps not spending too much time in trying to differentiate between the coaching and mentoring, because there is that point at which they cross over. So I think there, Lauren, did we want to just talk about the different the different styles of mentoring, and then look at experiences beyond that?
I think one of the first things I would like to say is a bit more broad in contextual terms, and that is one of the things that we need to really realise and understand, and Annie and I work very much closely with pre-service teachers and with early career teachers. I think it's really important to understand the context for them specifically. I think that mentoring that we're talking about tonight is not solely, but quite strongly geared towards early career teachers. I think one of the important things to understand, that whether it's obvious and explicit or not, is the existence of a power imbalance for early career teachers. So my research with early career teachers has been quite has shown a lot of evidence of this sense of power imbalance, this sense of a potential lack of agency on the part of early career teachers. And I think as mentors in schools, we need to be particularly aware of that and understand and have that sort of empathy. And that actually means that when we're involved in mentoring programs, there needs to be a lot of listening and perhaps questioning to understand the context that particular early career teacher is in, and not necessarily early career teacher actually, for all teachers, but to understand that situation and how they're feeling and how they're actually existing in their context, because it's probably like an iceberg. You can probably see a top, 10% of what's going on, but I can guarantee there's a lot going on under the surface. So power imbalance and the sort of existence of power structures within an organisation like a school is one of the first things that I wanted to talk about. And that sort of underpins the way that we approach mentoring programs, that way we start to build our mentoring relationships from the outset. Annie, I don't know if you want to come in at that point.
Actually, as you were saying that, because and I think Len and Patrick have both alluded to this a little bit before. Lauren and I have been doing some research on digital agency for early career teachers and for teachers in general. And I think that also aligns to just agency in general. But that in mentoring, that power imbalance can sort of be bottom up as well as top down. So sometimes it's the perceived power imbalance as well. So we have to remember as mentors that the person that you're mentoring, again, whether it's formal or informal, may perceive you to be a more informed person, a more experienced person, which you probably are, but also not to feel like they have the agency to sort of question what it is that you're mentoring about. And so I think that these are important things for us to remember, is that it goes up and down. And I guess at that point, what I'd like to talk about is our understanding of that vertical mentoring, but also the horizontal mentoring. And I know we have triads and we can think about that as well. But I think if we really understand that the vertical mentoring is where, I'm more experienced, I will mentor someone less experienced in whatever the field is. But the horizontal mentoring is where we mentor our peers, and you can have both. I would say that often with colleagues, myself, that while someone might be in a position that is more senior, that we've frequently had a very horizontal mentoring because it's reciprocal. It's me learning from them and them learning from me. And I think that in all mentoring, regardless of which direction it's sort of, I suppose, is on paper, that's something that's really important that we remember is integral to the notion of mentoring.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also sort of leads us into talking about how we develop mentoring programs, because I think there's obviously a lot more to it than just saying, there's an experienced person over there, how fabulous, you can go and mentor this newer person over here. So I think there has to be a lot of consideration about the practical logistics of the mentoring situation, and a really clear and careful understanding and identification of what the intention is for the mentoring process, because there has to be a way for the mentee, for want of a better word, to express and identify areas that they particularly would like mentorship in or mentoring in, as well as that coming from the school, because this comes from what I was talking about, sort of below the surface iceberg sort of scenario. So we can identify as school leaders what we think the situation is, but it's very important to understand from the mentee's perspective as well what the needs might be. So I think the background work and the planning work that goes into the development of a mentoring plan or process is very, very important. So it probably needs some identification of the skills and skill sets and communication structures that are going to be appropriate for the mentoring scenario. And sometimes it depends on the scenario, and this happens more in the corporate world, I guess, but the establishment of a mentoring contract so that both sides have the opportunity to lay out what it is they're hoping to get out of the mentoring process. That, as I say, that tends to be a little bit more corporate in nature, but that's something that, even if it's not done formally on paper, that it's really worthwhile spending some time unpacking together at the start of the relationship. So I think, Annie, would you agree that there are probably 3 sort of distinct stages of the mentoring process, that you have to spend that time at the beginning establishing the relationship, understanding where each other's experience lives and what their experience looks like and feels like, before identifying how you're going to move forward in the areas that you would particularly like to explore with the mentor and mentee.
Yeah, and I think this is where the complexity comes in, to be honest with you, is that, again, on paper, that can look all nicely organized and aligned and everything like that. And there's 2 sides to this conversation. One is that we can often, you can be matched with somebody that you just don't gel with. And that's one of the hardest things in having any sort of more formal kind of, here's our mentoring program, here's someone who could work with you, is good for you, those sorts of things. On the other hand, I think as a mentee myself in different circumstances, my first response with being aligned to someone has sometimes been that I don't feel like I'm going to work well with them. And you actually do. Because what they do is they provide you with an opportunity to really think differently. You don't always want to be mentored by someone who is exactly like you. You want to be mentored by someone who knows how to challenge you, but also does provide you with a different perspective and those sorts of things. And I'd say for me that one of the best situations that I ever had was someone that in the beginning I thought, oh, I just can't believe I'm matched with this person. And it was actually one of the most professionally rewarding mentoring experiences that I've ever had, ultimately. So I think we've got to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, and I'm fortunate that I haven't had that scenario, because when I've been in mentoring relationships, it's been a very positive experience for me. But I think what makes it that has made it that positive experience is that I was helped to feel that I had knowledge myself, that I had experience, and I had valid points and perspectives to bring to the conversation. And that helped me establish the confidence to push a little bit further and to explore areas that were perhaps a little bit more out of my experience and more challenging for me. So the role that the mentor played in that scenario was very much that a lot went into the establishment of that relationship and that sort of camaraderie and that expression that you as a person, you as an educator have the right to be here, and you have experience and you have your own unique perspective to bring. And I want to find out about that. So the mentor being interested to find out about the mentee's situation and experience, because it's often reciprocal. It's often the case that a mentor will learn just as much from a mentee as the other way around. And perhaps, Annie, I'm just wondering now, it might be a good point to sort of talk about mentoring structures and models, because it doesn't always have to be the one-on-one.
No, that's right.
Person and less experienced person.
Yeah, no, I think that would be really good. But I also wondered if, just before we do that, if maybe Len, if you could think about, before we look at structures, one of the biggest challenges in our education sector is the notion of time, because obviously none of us have any in schools, and well-intentioned programs are often not supported well enough by time, and so therefore they become something that is done because that's what we do. We do that as teachers. We mentor, we look after, we care for. And so, Len, just really briefly, in your experience, what are some of the ways that you've been able to manage that? Because, we have time, we have money, we're understaffed at the moment, we've got a terrible teacher shortage, all of those things.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the, from where I've been, I've been very lucky that 0.4 of my load is in fact related to coaching and mentoring. So what I've been able to do is allocate time. Obviously, my job is obviously to go into classes and and speak to the early, and mentor the early career teachers. I'm responsible for a number of them. And what I've done is that I've gone into the class, and one of the really important things about mentoring is the immediacy about once you've seen and talked and whatever, you need to be back there within the next half day. And I've been able to go and use lunch times, and I know that that's difficult for some people, but they've certainly appreciated the fact that I've got back within half a day and gone and said to them, what was great, that's what we looked at. I think that's really hard, one of the things that's I think is really important. It is difficult. The problem with schools, and I don't think people actually understand, the bigger the school, the bigger the problem. And the bigger the school where here we've got 400 teachers, everyone is doing playground duty, people are doing this, people are doing that or whatever. So it's time. So one of the things that we've done is that we have set aside, for example, lunch times, and we've put those lunch times once or twice a term and we've looked at timetables and, all the things that people have to do, and said, right, from 40 minutes, this is what we're going to do. And generally speaking, we've had some pretty good attendance, but it's really hard. It is hard. There's no question about it. The other thing is also that using the technology, you don't have to be at school. You can say, well, look, we'll have a Zoom call, a Teams call, and I've always worked on the basis that it's short and sweet and to the point. This dragging on the thing doesn't help anyone. So one of the things that we've done is we've used Teams, and the technology has been really good because what it means is it's immediate, it's agreed, and people have agreed to that. And as I said, it's the shortness and the succinctness of what you do, being time poor, and I'm just time poor like everyone else. That's what we do, and I think that's the really important thing. Just another thing about the structure. I think the structure really needs to be really formulated to some degree, where for our early career teachers here, what we've done is that for the first year, and it's part of their contract, and irrespective, there's early career teachers, and obviously we've hired people who are 10, 15, 20 years experience. We coach them too. We coach them too and mentor those people too. And I think that's really, we're within that structure. It means that people are accountable, and also too, we go for 3 years where we go in and talk to people that were here in 2022, 2021, that we coached and mentored. And I think that's a really important thing, is that there's a longevity issue. It's not like, early career, do it 1 year, see you later. We haven't done that at all. And I think that's the really important part. There's a continuity, and if you like, within what we believe is really important. And it's proved to be really successful, we think anyhow, here. And the other thing I think, you made mention of about the coaching conversations or the mentoring conversations. I think one of the really biggest issues is trust, and believing in the person. And I think, a couple of things that I think have been really important in fostering, whether people believe that, you can do the job, or, I'm not a very good mentor, or, reputations preceded you or before you, whatever. It's an issue about being in the present, by actually having the conversation and being and talking to people and actually looking at them. I know people go, well, but how many times have you been in a mentor or a coaching situation and people are looking over their your shoulder, and you go, I'm actually here, it's those sorts of things I think that people underestimate. And just one more thing, I think mentoring is really important, obviously, but you've got to choose your mentor, and I don't believe everyone puts up their hands and says, I want to be a mentor. I don't think sometimes they're good mentors at all. No. I think that process, that, as I think Annie made mention of it, that background work before you even get to the program itself, is sussing out people, and there's a few criteria that I think is really important, particularly if you say you've got subject knowledge and you're mentoring someone on that. Wow, they want to be good at what they do. They want to know what they're doing, particularly for early career.
Yeah, I think if I could just add to that, and we'll come back to that question, Patrick, or maybe we'll get Len to read that question just, and Lauren, while I'm just saying this. Within schools, okay, it's wonderful when we can have a very structured program, but a lot of mentoring is very much based on, someone who is good at something or knows something, and it becomes kind of ad hoc, or it becomes quite informal, but quite significant. My question really is how we manage, and I don't know that there's a really good answer, because I think when you are a mentor, so if you're the technology person in the school, so you become the person who's good at using technology, and you're kind and you're generous and you're giving, and it's a great thing to do. So that's that sort of more informal mentoring. Or you might be the person who's really good at particular classroom management, and you might have some really good skills or something like that. It's important for the people in leadership. So if you're in a more leadership position, to observe who those people are, and to provide them with opportunities for mentoring as well. And also to make sure that somewhere in there that you're recognizing the fact that that person is doing a lot of mentoring. And to be honest, most schools don't have time and space and money to put aside a lot of time, for allocations for mentoring. And I think we have to be very careful about that, because, the nature of the person who is the natural mentor is to give, and to give generously, but they need mentoring as well. And that mentoring may just be the opportunity to go to a teach meet, or go and just have time with other people at their same level at a conference or something like that. It doesn't have to be what we see in our head as mentoring. So that's just something that I think is really, really important, is that they're recognised as well.
I would also add to that, Annie, that I think it's really important that someone in the school is there to support the mentors as well. Because someone with that contextual knowledge of the school, of the policies and procedures and the systems and all of those things, and the students most specifically, that they're able to just have a check-in, say, hi, how's it going? Just 5-minute check-in to see that mentor is okay, because it is a significant load for someone to take on a mentoring role. And I think we perhaps have varying degrees of confidence in that, regardless of our experience in education. Actually acting as a mentor is a slightly different role than we used to, perhaps, in working with our students. So I think it's very important that someone within the leadership team or on the same level is there to just check in and say, hi, how's it going? Is there anything you need? Just that simple support structure being there and being recognisably there too.
Yeah, and I would also say that I think all mentors need to be given the opportunity to learn about mentoring, because even people who are naturally just, good, they listen to people and they're good at sharing and they're good at supporting, we still need to learn how to be an appropriate mentor, and to remember that when we're mentoring someone, just because that might be a way that works doesn't actually, mentoring is not something that the other person has to do. It's you mentoring them. And I think we have to learn how to manage that, how to manage when your mentee perhaps isn't responsive, how to manage when it doesn't work for them, all those kinds of things. But just even in how to manage ourselves in the mentoring sort of situation. So, that's another important part of any mentoring structure.
Yeah.
I think that's a...
Sorry, go, Patrick.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in with that question, because it's a good segue into that question, where we got one of our attendees asking, I have heard mentors described as experts sharing wisdom, while coaches are more focused on question asking and less on sharing expertise. Is this a common distinction between coaching and mentoring? So I think it's a good segue.
It's a good question, and I think the two are often conflated.
Yes.
I don't know, Len, do you want to jump in at this point and talk?
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree with that. It is conflated in that sense. I mean, I think that you know, from what in terms of what I've done in terms of coaching, my point is about literally having a conversation with those people about various issues, and if you go down the growth coaching model, you know, basically you're asking questions, and the end result is that you set goals and all those sorts of things. And then you give them and talk about options, and then obviously there's an outcome, and the coachee is actually he or she comes out with their own solution. I think there's something slightly different in that in terms of mentoring, where someone has a particular expertise, whether it be in, you know, pedagogical, content, digital, whatever. And I think what you need to make the distinction is that someone who's really got expertise in that area. Now, unfortunately, sometimes people, and I think Annie raised a really good point there, and Lauren, where basically sometimes it doesn't work. You know, I mean, it may be because of personality, it may be because of, or whatever it might be, but you're being, you know, you've mentored this new person coming in, and that person basically, it just doesn't work. And I think one of the things about mentors and coaches is that you step away, because you're going to do more damage. You know, it's not, and I mean, if you've tried and it's not worked, and I know Annie said right at the beginning, she said, you know, she met a person and went, oh my God, this is not going to be great, you know, and it was fantastic. Sometimes, I mean, I also think about mentoring is also too, that if you go for about 4 or 5 weeks, you know, and you're specific about what you're doing as a mentor, and it's not working, then you turn around and go, I put my hands up and go, I think this is not good. And for these reasons, and it isn't, and a lot of it, sometimes it's not the mentee, it's you. You don't have the answers as a mentor to go, oh, this is what you should do. And I think there's a degree of honesty and reciprocity in terms of going, no, it's not going to work, and step away. And I think that's, for me, I think that's I think there's an issue about honesty there. Yeah.
And also that support network beyond the actual mentor-mentee relationship. I think that's critical, so that the mentor and the mentee both have someone who is open and not judgmental, but they can go to and say, for me, this perhaps isn't working. It may be another solution that I need, or something like that. Or I don't feel that I'm able to support this person in what they're actually looking for. Perhaps another mentor might be more appropriate. So having that external support network, but within the school, is often a good solution to that kind of thing. And it's often just having a leader who's just there and open to talking about the process. So Annie,
is that where that structure really comes in, where because there's a couple of things. First of all, I'm not sure that sometimes it really matters, the distinction between coaching and mentoring, because there is such crossover. And to me, it's sort of like, what kind of technology do you use? Do you use a Mac or a PC? Well, actually, it's what you're doing with it that's really, really important. It in 2023, I think we're sort of moving beyond. And so perhaps we really need to look at what the purpose of the relationship is sort of designed for, and how that relationship can be best supported for all stakeholders. And with that in mind, as you know, where we talk about like a triad where you've got one mentor and a couple of mentees, I think it can work equally as well, sort of the other way, where for each mentee, you may have several mentors who you go to for different reasons. And perhaps that's a really good way, and you'll find that some of that will happen naturally. But I think that takes the load off both ways and stops it being that one person is responsible for everything for that person, for the mentee. And you're more likely to get that cross-fertilization when you have several going both ways. So to me, that's probably, it's almost like a bit of a matrix where you have, you know, the lines matching, and they don't just match to one person, they match to several. So it becomes more web-like.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think you know, people don't within schools might be really proficient at being in terms of content. They might be outstanding in that, but they may not be very good in terms of behaviour. You know, I mean, for example, you know, some people can walk into the classroom and just their sheer presence, and there's no problem in terms of behaviour. So they've never had to worry about those sorts of things. Whereas some people walk into the classroom and it becomes a nightmare, and you can't. And as a mentor, you go, I don't know what the answer is, because if someone walks in, all of a sudden there's a hush and everyone's on song, but people, as soon as you leave, the mentee is all of a sudden becomes a zoo, you know, and that's a huge issue because you don't have the answers. You know, I mean, there are a few things that you can try, but you know, and I think your point is really relevant in terms of issues like not everyone is up to date in terms of literacy, whether it be digital, whether it be, you know, mathematical, whether it be written or whatever. No one's an authority in that area. And I think what people can do is then go, as you said, and go to different people and say, look, you know, I've got a problem in terms of, you know, getting people to write or all of those sorts of things. I need a mentor to come in and look at what I'm doing from a literacy point of view. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that?
Len, if I can just interrupt and read Victoria's question there about assuming class control is innate instead of learned. No, I think what Len's actually saying there is sometimes, this is my interpretation, and Len, you're welcome to add, but I think it's good to have another, is that if I'm someone's mentor and I provide them with strategies, if those strategies aren't working for the mentee, then they're just not going to work. So it's about having perhaps multiple mentors that can provide multiple ways of implementing classroom management that might work for me. It might not work for Lauren. It might work for Len. It might not work for Patrick. And so I think that's probably more what Len was saying really there, as opposed to it being something that you can either do or not do. Yeah. And apologies if I've misinterpreted that.
No, not in the least. And I think the other question here at present is about, shouldn't we have a toolbox of strategies? That's true.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the same in terms of pedagogy. You know, you see over the years I've seen, not just at Barker, but other schools that I've been in when I was working at uni, you know, and people, you know, they do the same thing, you know, Mondays roast beef, Wednesdays chicken. They do the same strategies, and you think, oh my God, I'm going to bash my head against a wall, you know. And the kids go, well, no, you know, this is the same thing all the time. You do need a repertoire of if you like, strategies, but for behavioural issues, about pedagogical aspects that you're trying to do, the actual, you know, looking at how do you teach well. And you need those strategies. And those strategies, unfortunately, you know, you get people who are cynical enough to go, well, I keep on getting band 6s and gee, I don't need any help whatsoever. And you go, wow, okay, thanks very much for that. And there's no growth, none, you know.
I think another thing there, just continuing on with, and thanks, Victoria, for your contribution here. What might work for you for one class also, or for one mentee, or for one situation, won't necessarily work for the next class, for the next mentee, for whatever, you know. And a great example I had of that was a young fellow who was doing his professional experience, and he'd had a great mentor in his previous professional experience and was very good at doing the, you know, the clapping things for control. But it was a disaster for him in this second prac because he was in a year 6 class and he wasn't comfortable with it, and you could see it in him, his whole body language, and he'd be sort of standing at the front and he'd be doing this little thing, and it just was a disaster. So the mentor, the things he was learning, all of those things were great in one situation, but for the situation he was in now, he needed a different type of not only sort of strategies, but perhaps a different mentor who was able to reach him in that situation. So I think it's about everything. It's about circumstance, context. You know, we've all, as teachers, had 2 classes back to back, you know, year 8 English, or worse, or I don't mean worse still, I mean, or another example, year 9 English back to back. And each class, because of the makeup of the classroom, you will teach very differently. So as a mentor, I might share that with someone as well and say, you know, there is no, my advice to that person, or my mentoring to that person, would be about having exactly what you said, a toolbox of strategies, both as a mentor and for the person that you're mentoring. So, but Lauren, did you want to talk more about actual, you know, more formalized structures?
Yeah, I just also want to chip in here, because I really liked Victoria's comment about sharing experiences of struggles yourself. And I think that's something at the beginning of a mentoring relationship that really helps to establish that trust. Yeah. So I think that's really a really good way to start, because, you know, we've all started, we've all been there at the beginning, and we've all had our struggles, and yeah, so we've got a lot of experience in that way, and I think that's a really good way to establish that sense of trust. I also think, in terms of, because Annie and I, when we teach together, we always talk about having a toolkit or a toolbox for various scenarios, but I think it's essential for, as a teacher generally, to have a sort of a range of different strategies that you can apply and to different scenarios, but also as a mentor, I think you need to be able to understand, okay, well, this, perhaps I'm not helping in this way, but how about I go away and consider how else I might be of help to this mentee. And there's a lot we can learn, and that comes back to support of the mentor. It comes back to perhaps professional learning for mentorship as well, for mentoring in schools. Sorry, I'm just having a quick look at the chat. But, so we were talking about structures. So there's a lot of research on mentoring, and I got to say that a lot of it does come out of the corporate sector, because they've been doing this more formally for a long, long time. So there's common structures are, in fact, Annie, you've already alluded to one, which is the range of mentors available to people. And that perhaps for a school, that requires a different structure, a different consideration of how that's going to work. But it's certainly a very, very good scenario for early career teachers to have access to a range of mentors. And the other one you briefly alluded to was the triad, which was the idea of having 2 mentees and 1 mentor, because not only then have you got the benefit of the sort of horizontal, there's a vertical mentoring situation with the mentor and their wealth of experience and expertise, but you've also got a peer mentor there. And I think there's a huge value in peer mentorship and peer mentoring. It's something we run, Annie and I run, is sort of peer mentoring processes over a period of about 6 weeks. And even if that's initially a little bit challenging, because it's perhaps a little bit different for some people and their ideas of mentoring, it actually works really, really well. And then for the mentor themselves to be able to actually sit back and have a look at what's happening in that peer mentoring relationship, and to be sort of a little bit judicious and strategic about how they can then be of most support and benefit to the mentees. Sorry. So I think there's a lot of value to that kind of structure as well. What do you think, Len?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think it's a very smart idea. I mean, interesting question that's come up about, it says follow-up question from Doug, if a mentor serves as an expert. All right. it's a really interesting thing about what you consider as good teaching. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, what does good teaching look like? And there are some people that have got, you know, ideas about what good teaching is. I mean, there are elements of, you know, what you do within the lesson itself. And some people are very good at doing that. But, you know, one of the big questions that I've raised here, and I think in various parts, and when I was at UTS the other day, I talked to some of the students there and said, what does good teaching look like? What does it actually look like? What does it incorporate? And at the end of the day, you know, you can get 25, if you put 25 teachers in a room, you get 50 different ideas about what good teaching looks like. But there's never really a consensus about what you're trying to do. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a means to an end in sense. I mean, what's the outcome for the student? What does it actually mean for the student in terms of good teaching? And I think the other thing is also one of the things that I think is about videoing people. Now, I know that people go, well, I don't want to be mentored. I don't want to look at that. But when you start using video, then you can sit down and you know, we're looking at this new program called Step Lab, where we're absolutely isolating a piece of a lesson and zeroing in on that, you know. And I think that's what you know, lots of people go, you know, mentoring, oh, I'm going to look at the whole 50-minute or the hour or whatever it might be. And it's just too big. You have to mentor using maybe, you know, a pedagogical lens or a behavioural lens, but on one aspect of the lesson. Otherwise, it just becomes a mush. It's like a marshmallow, just goes. You have to go better than that. And I think that's one of the really important things about breaking the lesson down into specific things and then practicing it. You know, it's no good turning around and going, oh, I think you should start the lesson with X, Y, Z. And you go, oh, I tried that. And you go, how do you know it went well? Well, the kids look good, book looked great. And you go, do they really understand that? That's what I think, that's where mentors, you need to be really active and you need to have an agreement about what good teaching looks like. You know,
yeah. If I could also just address Doug's question about, and I don't think any of us really see a mentor as an expert. They're experienced, as opposed to being an expert. And yes, I do think Doug has said, can a math teacher mentor an English teacher? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But as a non-maths teacher, I probably wouldn't mentor a maths teacher in the maths, but I might be able to mentor as originally a primary teacher and then teaching in secondary as well. I think you can bring across things like, well, you might understand foundational learning a little bit more. So I might be able to say, look, have you thought about using a particular strategy? So it's more about finding, and that's where that mentors and mentees having more than one is really important, because, you know, you go to the person for a particular thing. I'd go to my English peers, my English KLA, for something on, you know, looking at, well, teaching Shakespeare to Year 9 boys. But I also, when I was doing it, went to my own sons and talked to them as almost as a little bit of mentors to say, what did you like or not like about learning about Shakespeare? And so who your mentor is in any particular situation is actually about the experience that they bring to the situation that you have questions about, or that you feel that you have gaps in, and that you're not actually necessarily looking for an answer always, and nor does the mentor have to provide the answer. They might have to say, as I'm sure we all have, I don't know, let's try and work it out together, because that's why I don't think that they are an expert. They're experienced.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, and I'm coming from a background of being modern languages other than English teacher, and often teachers in my sort of subject area might be the only one in a school. And so you might not have the benefit of having someone with that expertise in your curriculum area, certainly in my circumstances, but I've learnt a phenomenal amount from geography teachers, from history teachers, So I've learnt about setting up routines that will help me manage a class from the beginning of the year. I've understood how to engage with students coming into the classroom. There's a lot I can do. I have a certain amount of knowledge about the actual content area and language teaching methodologies, but what the value of exploring a relationship with a mentor in from a different KLA has been huge for me. It's been really, really beneficial. There's lots that you can gain. And actually, I think it should be encouraged. I think it should be encouraged, for us to get outside of perhaps our little silos and just go across to other disciplines and explore the potential relationships that can occur for mentoring across disciplines. There's perhaps a new radical model for us, let's think.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right, Lauren. I think it's really important that you get out. I mean, as an example, we had a person here who was his second year of teaching and teaching English, and he was teaching a specific way of writing, and it was enlightening, but there were people there. And he was his second year out, and he just ran this brilliant hour-and-a-half thing about writing. And I walked away and went, wow. So it didn't matter about experience. It was a matter about knowledge, a capacity to relate. Was it relevant? Absolutely relevant. And that was exciting. He was actually mentoring me, which I think is some of the things that we miss out on in that. And I think I absolutely agree with what you said. I'm hopeless at maths and stuff like that, but it's just wonderful to go into a maths and go, wow. And then my thing was, would I want my daughter to be taught by you? And went, yeah, that's it. And I think that's where a mentor and a mentee can turn around and they teach you something, and you've talked about it, and you walk away and you go, wow, I'm better off having you teach me. It's really cool.
Well, actually, my really good experience that I had with the person I didn't think I was well matched with was someone who was a maths teacher. And the reason it ended up being so good for us is because her more analytical viewpoint of things really balanced out my very humanities type approach. And helped me to develop strategies in my own teaching and planning and preparation that I just didn't have previously. And I've always thought of that as, the balance that we gave to one another was actually really incredible. And it was probably one of the highlights of my entire teaching, was working with this person as a mentor. And then we became kind of cross mentors, I guess, mentor mentee with each other. So I think that we can't underestimate what it is you're getting from any particular mentoring relationship, that not only may not be what you think it will be, but also it doesn't have to be aligned on paper. Sometimes as it develops, it becomes something that it may not have ever been intended.
Yeah, agreed. And so in summary, in a sense, we've talked about the structure, we've talked about the conduct. I mean, if someone came to you and said to you, what's the essence of mentoring that would enable a person to become a better teacher and grow, what would you say?
For me, I think listening and understanding, taking that time to actually listen to the other person and to really, rather than tending to want to jump in and offer my kind of, well, I've experienced this situation and I did this. Well, let me actually listen and really understand what that means for you in this scenario, and perhaps then we can explore through questioning, drawing out and understanding the scenario before. So I think it's kind of being careful and considerate and really being open to understanding in a lot more depth, I suppose, and detail.
Yeah, I'd agree, Lauren. And I think you're not a band-aider. You're not there to fix things. You're there to, it's almost more like triage. You're just there to sort of, as Lauren said, to listen and to ask those, you know, why do you ask that question? What are you looking for? What do you hope to achieve? Rather than, you know, I think often we tend to run in with our box of Band-Aids and start sticking them all over because we want to fix things. And that's probably the hardest thing in being a mentor. I
like what you said before, Annie, about the direction of the mentoring relationship might not go in the way that you expect it to go, but it'll still be very, very valuable in supporting your development, the mentee's development as a teacher, as a quality educator, and the understanding of what is involved in being a good teacher.
Yeah, I think it's also what are the outcomes you want for your students? You know, I mean, we get lost in the minutiae, if you like, of wanting to be a good teacher, this and whatever. And at the end of the day, you know, you're ticking boxes, but then you forgot to go and have a look at what do the kids achieve. You know, that's a really interesting thing about, you know, it's almost like wanting to know whether in fact the students have gone forward. I mean, this mentoring and coaching is a process. But at the end of the day, the end result of why we do this is because of the end result of we want students to be better at what they've done. And so, and in terms of whether it be writing, you know, literacy, digital, whatever you like, it has to be that has to be the end result, is their actual growth in the students that you teach.
Yeah. Can I just add, I just want to add one more thing, and I'm very conscious of the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's really, really important also that a mentee does not have to be someone who appears to need something.
Yep.
That when, again, we're not fixing something. Mentoring is not about fixing something that's lacking or fixing something that's broken, because for all of us in our roles, you may be a great teacher, you may have great strategies, you may have all of those things, but if you're someone in leadership, I think that we need to look at what's the role of mentoring in our school, and what are the kinds of mentoring circumstances or situations that we want to make available. Because if we look at it as mentoring is always helping someone develop something, then I think we're starting with the wrong aspect of mentoring. And yes, it can be for that, definitely, but it's not only for that. So mentoring is really about providing relationships and providing someone that the mentor or mentee can actually have there, that they know that there is somebody there that they can go and talk to and be less than perfect, be vulnerable, be, I'm not managing, that kind of thing. So I think that there's that as well, that it's beyond just that coaching and strategies.
Yeah, and I think what it is also building a culture within the school itself of support and growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always thought that what you wanted to do was there was a belief that people were valuable. You know, it wasn't just a piece of human capital. It was what we're looking at is building if you like, a corporate culture that was based on a whole range of, you know, really solid principles of things like, you know, I guess trust, dependent, or, you know, reciprocity, all those sorts of things become, that's what you want. Because if that's there, and you see that in some departments when I've gone into them, that some were just, all it was about growing, and therefore it flowed on, and the end results of that was that it flowed on to the kids in terms of their performance and how they related to staff. I think that's the sort of thing that you're looking at. For me, that's what you're trying to build, a growth culture. It's probably not the most appropriate word, but you want to build a culture that's supportive, people are grown, and they actually value being in the classroom.
Yeah. And it's something that flows on with a relationship with students.
Absolutely.
It's an
Absolutely.
experience reflected in the classroom. So huge
Yes.
value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
All
Thank you,
right.
Patrick. You're looking like you need
Well,
to stop talking.
look, no. I mean, we can keep going, but unfortunately, that's all the time that we have, because I know lots of you guys are busy and everyone else is as well, and we're obviously time conscious. But can I just firstly say thank you? The discussions have been so rich. The conversations have been so rich. The questions have been wonderful. And I think it's going to leave us all pondering and thinking more about and focusing more on the importance of coaching and mentoring. So thank you. And obviously, on behalf of the Teachers Guild of New South Wales Council, I would like to extend our gratitude to our distinguished panelists, Lauren and Annie, and obviously Len for moderating and hosting and jumping in when need be as well, for your invaluable time and dedication in facilitating this informative discussion on the opportunities and challenges surrounding our topic today. The Teachers Guild of New South Wales acknowledges your contributions and commends your efforts in enhancing education, fostering professional development, and most importantly, cultivating a vibrant professional association. So thank you. In terms of follow-up, a recording of this event will be shared along with a certificate of attendance and a short post survey to assist us in shaping future monthly online webinars. So thank you so much for being part of this event, and we look forward to your participation in future Guild events. Please stay safe and well.
Thank you, Len. Lovely to see you. Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Patrick.
Thank you. Bye.